And it doesn't get a lot more interesting than going to Eugene, Oregon. Indiana headed to Oregon to face a Ducks team that we have not seen play since the 2 overtime game in State College. Meanwhile, Indiana, this is their chance. This is like when they went to Ohio State last year. They got their doors blown off in that game, and it sort of reinforced they're only good, they're only making the playoff because their schedule stunk. Indiana's schedule's much more challenging this year, but this is, with Penn State not being maybe that great, this might be their chance to show this is us playing against elite competition. So, gentlemen, what do we think happens in this game?
Less stinky. That's Indiana football 2025. Less stinky by circumstance. I feel confident in saying that.
They were not stinky at all last year. They just got beat by the eventual national champs on the road.
I want to be really clear. Yeah. I bought in on Indiana last year. You can only play your opponents, right? We know how many years in advance some of these schedules are built. I did not hold it against Indiana last year that the schedule shook out the way it did. They did everything they could when they hired Cignetti.
They had the 2 teams that played for the national title the year before that happened to not be good.
Yes, absolutely. Man, I didn't want to enter into this segment slighting either team, but that Oregon win over Penn State, kind of suspicious now, Andy. Like, are we taking something away from the Ducks now? Like, was there a deficiency there?
I'm not going to, because I know what that roster looks like, and we've seen Dan Lanning, and Ross, you've dealt with Dan Lanning to this point. Like, are there 2 more perfect characters for a game like this than Dan Lanning and Curt Cignetti?
Yeah, these 2 are they are, for different reasons, I guess, kind of fun to be around, right? Like Cignetti has got that sort of well, they're both sort of just brash, bold. Cignetti's got that like dry sort of sense of humor and seems to poke purposely at people. And I guess so does Dan. So they are kind of kind of similar. You know, not in age.
Sig's your buddy's dad, who you never know if he's screwing with you or not, Ross.
Yeah.
We're always like hanging out with your buddy's dad, and he just tells a joke without ever smiling.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy because they're a generation apart, but I feel like Lanning sort of arrived on the national scene before Cignetti did, because Cignetti was coaching at Elon and then James Madison. But I would say their styles are incredibly similar from the sense of humor, the drier sense of humor, but also in the way they get their teams ready for a big game, where it is, you try to imbue your team with a sense of supreme confidence that you are the best team on the field.
Yeah.
And you're going to show it. And in this particular case, Oregon probably objectively has the better team.
Right.
But I don't know how much better. I think this Indiana team is better than last year's Indiana. They brought back almost everybody who was important from last year. They lost the quarterback, Curtis Rourke, but Fernando Mendoza is probably an upgrade.
One of the reasons I think they have to push this dynamic of, I don't know, it's like confidence building, I guess, Andy, is that in very different ways, both of these programs are slighted at the national level. Oregon is on a different level than Indiana by far, right? Indiana is a completely obsolete, essentially what the losingest program in FBS history up until, last year or whatever. So the psychology that Cignetti is imbuing in his roster versus what Lanning has to deal with at Oregon, they're different. But the criticism is roughly the same because of the way they lost the Rose Bowl and then the way Indiana lost to Notre Dame. And so it's this idea of you focus on the portal, you're highly talented, you're both good recruiters, and you can still do chip on your shoulder for a while. Now, the winner of this game, that starts to shed off a little bit. But to go back to the actual football part of this in Indiana, I think we talked about this leading into the week. Was it 2 weeks ago? There's a lot of credit to going to Iowa and winning by playing Iowa football. And Indiana now has done that where they've won in different ways, which is a cliche to talk about, but it is also...
It's a requirement to win the national title, though.
It's a symptom of a program that's developing in a positive direction. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I think that you mentioned, Andy, this team maybe being even better than last year. I think defensively they definitely are. I mean, they've played better than what they did last year. Look at Old Dominion, 14 points, Kennesaw State, 9. They shut out Indiana State, 10 points to Illinois, and then Iowa, 15 points. I mean, that's what they've allowed this year.
Well, the Old Dominion game is interesting because, and we rightfully criticized their schedule, their non-conference schedule, because it sucked. They should have done better than that. Like they should try a little harder in that front. And they're the ones canceling games against power conference opponents, which they're probably going to have to reschedule some of those because the Big Ten's going to make them play at least one down the road here. But the Old Dominion game, I remember Cignetti being really mad about how that turned out. They only won 27-14. Turns out they beat a really good team that day.
G5 guy here. One of the biggest turnarounds other than the University of Virginia. Go down to Norfolk. Old Dominion is one of the biggest surprises in college football this year, and Ricky Ronnie has done an amazing job. You just don't know in week one, but that is probably the best result on the sheet. It only took them 2 quarters.
63-10 over Illinois is pretty good.
It only took them 2 quarters to humiliate Illinois, and then they tried to not blow them out. Like they subbed out in the third.
They could have scored 100 that day. They really could have scored 100 if they tried.
Yeah. And so what happens? I don't know. I mean, it's at Oregon. So would have trouble picking Indiana to win, especially with the Oregon team that I saw against Penn State. I know Penn State then turned around and lost to UCLA, but Dante Moore looked better than I thought. They got some good receivers over there. I mean, they're put together pretty good. So I feel like at home that Oregon sort of holds serve, but and as TJ, our producer, said, who may or may not be biased, Oregon's going to be quite electric there. He said it's going to be electric.
I wanted to stand for the Hoosiers.
60,000 in Austin sound like 100,000 somewhere else.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Definitely. It's one of the few like big name overhyped venues that still delivers, at least in terms of like crowd noise and the intensity. I wanted to stump for Indiana here. They don't have a power non-conference game on the schedule until 2030, so we might need to fix that. I just looked at all of their future dates.
They're going to be forced to fix that. I would assume in the next really 2 years. But so I wonder if Dan Lanning has watched Indiana play this year and said, you know what, we're going to Iowa them. We're going to try to turn this into an Iowa game, because I think if you watch the Indiana-Iowa game, a better version of Iowa would have beaten Indiana that day. And Oregon can be we talked about, can you win games in a slog? Can you win games in a shootout? Oregon is equipped personnel-wise to win both ways. I might try to make this an Iowa game, because what Iowa did to them is basically stop their run game, which if they can't run their offense, it doesn't fall apart, but it becomes very difficult to work, because they run to set up the pass, which it used to be what everybody did. But in today's offense, a lot of times you're throwing to set up the run. So Indiana's average yards per carry in the Illinois game, 6.4. That's how you win 63-10. In the Iowa game, 2.7. Oregon might be able to do it. You load the box and just say Fernando Mendoza beat us over the top, and don't let them run and keep them in third and long. Like, I think that's how you do it, because you can score more than 20 against them, where more than 15 against them, and Iowa didn't.
I mean, they ran the ball 39 times against Penn State and still came out with a 4.5-yard average. I'm buying what you're selling here, just because I think they could slow this thing down. They don't have a comp to this on their schedule except for the Penn State game. I mean, they really weren't in a position to Iowa anybody, because they were just so far superior to the early schedule. But yeah, I mean, based off of especially the front end of that Penn State game, I think it's possible. I don't want to get weird to think of Oregon playing small ball.
Yeah, I really don't want to get into a shootout with Indiana. That's the thing. I feel better if I'm not letting them run the ball very much, if I'm loading the box and daring Fernando Mendoza to beat me over the top. Like, I'm okay with that. But this is going to be a fascinating game, because this is two really good coaches who may come in with a very defined plan of what they want to do, and then 2 series in may have to scrap it, depending on what the other guy does.
Yeah. Did you guys see somebody like on Twitter had put the average D-line size for Indiana, which is like 279, and then the average Oregon O-line size, which was 325. a 50-pound difference. And, and that, to a degree,
But
that's the case a
isn't that
lot, right?
almost every
Defensive
team?
linemen, defensive linemen are
everybody's
normally
getting light in the
smaller
ass.
but
Yeah.
so it's not that big of a gap. But what's funny is the Indiana defensive coordinator tweeted that and wrote, "Didn't realize how small and defenseless we're going to be. Oh no!" Exclamation point. So it's good.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah,
good.
I mean,
So I'm
your
sure
edge
Mr.
guys are
Cignetti will
240,
use some of that.
Yeah. Your edge guys are 240, 250. But like basic math tells you you're going to have that average is going to be strong.
Yeah.
So
One of the reasons
Oklahoma with the 330-pound D tackles is probably the only one that's going to look close to similar.
I'll say one of the reasons why they probably are stretching to pull quote tweets is that these guys are so similar. They understand they understand the game of creating slights and chips on shoulders. They've been nothing but effusive in praise for. I watched both clips from both press conferences this week, but I also think I think that's genuine.
Yeah.
Like, guys who build their public brand on transparency and that sort of like, I'm fine showing the aggression, I'm fine showing the emotion. They tend to respect that in other people. Sig is like, I still think Sig is probably the game's elite dry wit in terms of like the bomb. Like there's a lot of cut ups going around on social of just all the little non sequiturs he's dropped. Dan doesn't really do that as much. Like I think
Dan
in other
does
words,
it
like
with his team, but not so much in the public eye.
Yes. Yeah. That's good way to put it.